Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, and I've been promising some of my patients and followers, subscribers, that I'd be doing a video on my exploits with ketosis. So I happened to get this book on Amazon. He essentially is a doctor and scientist out of South Africa. And the exploits in the book, which is hard to find, but I don't know how I scored it. The exploits in the book talk about his trial. The trial of going through his trial. But it's really nice because the data, it not only tells you about the exploits of what happens when you try to buck the system, but also tells you about a lot of data that refutes the old techniques and embraces new concepts. That doesn't mean we get rid of old stuff. I mean, Dean Ornish's information on the vegan and low-fat diet, in addition to yoga, breath exercise, group counseling, does help. It showed that it decreased and reversed heart disease in previously obstructed coronary arteries, and now it's showing the same impact to prostate cancer and situ. I think it's a nice idea to give options. And this is totally opposite the low-fat vegan diet. This is ketosis. So those of you who don't know ketosis, it's eating meats and fats, mostly fat. And the old thinking with the heart cholesterol hypothesis was that the reason for heart disease was because of fat. In the last 15 to 20 years, we've been pushing carbohydrates and low-fat diets as doctors and as registered dietitians following American Heart Association and the American Diabetic Association. Now, but it's chock full of data, or at least studies that Noakes quotes and referenced, and that's why he practiced the way he practiced. Did a lot of really smart stuff with athletes as far as nutrition. And I think that's the perfect application, but it can also be applied to the general population, especially if everybody, 2 and 3 people are obese, and then of that 2 and 3 people, especially in the United States, you'll have some of them go to heart disease and some of them go straight to cancer. So what we want to do is decrease death. And how do we decrease death? It's not with prescriptions, it's not with surgeries, it's with lifestyle change. It's just that everybody kind of recognizes, oh, my friend had bypass, my dad had cancer, my mom had a stroke. You know, everybody recognizes that, but I think if you're empowered to make changes before that crap happens, I think you win. But again, the people that are empowering you have to understand the concepts that are out there. So I'm a vegan since 2018, November. Low-fat, vegan, meditation, group therapy is tough. It's a tough sell, but that's okay. We learn from our mistakes. But here's the thing. For you average Joes and Janes, if you learn from mistakes, sometimes by the time you learn, it's way too deep in the mistake. So when disease becomes irreversible, there's still a chance. But man, once you have that stent, once you have that insulin pump, once you have fibromyalgia, it's kind of tough to turn that around. Hopefully this empowers you, but my story is this. I've been vegan, and I gained weight from COVID. And everybody that watches my videos, I gained 10 pounds. And I'm not exercising as much, but I'm starting to ramp that up. But I wanted to give ketosis a try. So I broke my vegan about 4 weeks ago now. I broke veganism, and I said, I'm going to go keto, full bore. So I got 15 to 20% carbohydrates, and everything else was fats, and then a little bit of protein in there. And I was doing that while I was still practicing intermittent fasting. So even from veganism, I only had plant-based food from 12 to 8, most of the days of the week, for about a year and a half. I was expecting to shock my metabolism to maybe drop a couple pounds, but it didn't really work. The concept I garnished from the data, which is robust. I mean, I admit the information coming out of a lot of major universities in the United States, backed by or fueled by PhDs, it's pretty decent with regards to the information from ketosis. Bierkman, D'Agostino, Finney, nice information. So I think it's worth the try. But here's what happened. I have my numbers to show you. I probably should have blacked out my birthday, but so first number is my cholesterol rate. So I'm just going to hold this here. This is my cholesterol. And it goes like this. These are the dates, and these are the numbers. You don't have to worry about this part, but if you notice, when I practiced ketosis, that was one of the highest hits of cholesterol ever. So that I expected. In fact, most of my keto practitioners, I expect they're going to, in the first year, have elevated cholesterol. I think it's because when you burn fat, as your body becomes fat adapted, you will be able to release the contents of the fat, and the contents would be a lot of cholesterol stored as a poison in the fat. So you lose fat, high cholesterol. Once you stabilize that, cholesterol will balance off. You can burn it off with muscle. That's the theory. So this is my glucose level, all right? Here's the dates. Here's all the previous studies. I like self-experimenting. And look at this. Man, that was the highest fasting glucose I ever had, 106. That's pre-diabetes. And I'm an intermittent faster. I'm already fat adapted. This is my beta-hydroxybutyrate. Hopefully you can see that. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is a fat precursor. And when you have a fat precursor and it's in the bloodstream, that means your insulin's going down and you're burning fat. You're fat adapted. So here's a couple of hits from over the last year or two. Here's a couple. This is when I first did I formulated my own Prolon box. I'll talk about that in a second. I got a beta-hydroxybutyrate of 1.3. That's pretty decent. I hit ketosis. Here's when I did a Prolon box. I didn't calculate it on my own. I went and spent the money. 4.4, that's my best beta-hydroxybutyrate level. The higher the beta-hydroxybutyrate, the more fat adapted, the lower the insulin. Lower insulin, I'll tell you what happens with that later. But here is me going through a couple of intermittent fasts, and then here is my big ketosis. Look at that, it's crappy. 0.6, and 0.6 is where I've been. So ketosis, or practicing a ketogenic diet, didn't really do anything. It kept me exactly where I was. So I really expected I was going to hit 4.4. I was going to hit high levels, intermittent fasting and ketosis, but nothing happened. In fact, I've done better with Prolon vegan fasting. So if ketosis markers are a indication that you're well adapted, and then here's the insulin levels. So my insulin levels, as I mentioned, the higher the beta-hydroxybutyrate, the lower the insulin level. And not that I blame insulin, but I blame what causes insulin to rise, and it's mostly food. So here's my levels of insulin, pretty decent one. I didn't know I was this good. So insulin level, pretty decent. Nothing above 4. And suddenly I hit 8. That sucks. So by inducing 4 weeks of a ketogenic diet, I actually had more insulin secretion and I had a crappy beta-hydroxybutyrate. So I have a lot of patients that are insulin resistant into the 20s as far as that insulin. So I was really expecting more out of this, and I think I have the reason. So I'll defend my position. I probably ate more protein. So protein, certain proteins or amino acids can trigger insulin. That's why when you do the breakdown of macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, you want to keep it, if you're going to go keto, you want to keep it high fat, low carbohydrate, and kind of low protein, because protein can turn on insulin. Not all the amino acids will turn on insulin, but a few of them will. Animals, at least when they're studied, can turn on insulin. And that's how I came up with the reason why my insulin was so high. Perhaps, just argument's sake, perhaps, a lot of the stuff that I was putting down as far as fat keto was probably heavy with amino acid. I'll give you that. So maybe if I get really more formulated, it might work better, but I'm not going to do that. So even though my insulin level went up, I think it's repairable. And this study from animal sources shows that you can reverse insulin damage. So if you watch my video on insulin resistance, if the body is constantly showered with carbohydrate, or in this case protein, the right protein, then you're going to induce an insulin response. And if you eat a lot, the insulin will go up, but the insulin and the carbohydrate or the protein will go down. That's the way it's supposed to happen. But we don't stop eating. I think we daisy chain our meals, which is eat your breakfast, eat your snack, eat your lunch, eat your snack, eat your dinner. And that's the old way of doing it, assuming that small portions would get you by without making you obese, but it ain't working, at least for most people. Now, if you have insulin that you're taking, don't listen to what I'm saying, but hopefully most of the people that are not on insulin yet will listen. And the reason why a lot of endocrinologists don't go straight to insulin anymore, we used to do that reflexly. You get somebody with elevated cholesterol, elevated glucose, you just go ahead and put them on insulin. Bring that thing down, but they found that bringing the glucose down and making the blood test happy doesn't necessarily make the body happy, because people gained weight with insulin. So insulin will make you gain weight, whether you do it exogenously by injecting it to bring down a nasty number, or you're insulin resistant because you eat too many sugars, or you eat too many snacks, or you're not giving yourself a break, no fasting, the insulin that you endogenously produce will stay high, and that'll give you the same effect. Insulin, whether you inject, will give you insulin resistance. Insulin, if you make too much of it, will give you insulin resistance. And it is repairable to a certain degree. Again, if you get taken care of early, you might be able to repair the beta cells of the pancreas so that they will decrease the insulin secretion and the cells of the rest of the body will become sensitive to insulin again. If you're insulin resistant, you can crank that insulin up and the cells aren't going to let any glucose in. You need insulin to get glucose in, and when you get glucose in, you got energy. But if the glucose can't go in because the cells won't let the insulin in and they're a pair that has to get in, that means the cell starves. Unless you're fat adapted, then the cell can use the fat. So hopefully you get that. So why the big deal? Well, the business is longevity. I usually at 50 you're on 3 medicines or 4, 60 you're on 4 or 5, 70 you're on 4 or 5 plus a procedure. It just goes on. Why? Because I think we missed the boat with regards to lifestyle change, which is what integrative medicine is about. But this is why I would do what I'm doing. So insulin-like growth factor 1, it comes from the brain, and bodybuilders like IGF because that is an indication that your growth hormone is secreting. And when your growth hormone is secreting, you can get really big. So if you can pulse the growth hormone at the right time, you might be able to gain muscle. But the problem is when you build like that, one downside is that you'll also stimulate mTOR. mTOR is what, it's the mammalian target of rapamycin. And it has been shown that the higher the mTOR, the faster the death. The lower the mTOR, the lower the IGF-1, the longer the life. Short people from La Ronde, it's a place where there was genetic inbreeding, and a certain subset of the population there lived without any cancer. And scientists went backwards to figure out what was the key that made these people live without any sign of cancer into old age. It was because they were missing IGF-1. That's why they're so short. Low growth hormone. But if it's on all the time, that's not good. So why am I thinking it's on all the time? Well, insulin-like growth factor usually indicates growth hormone is pulsed high. Insulin-like growth factor. What does that look like? It looks like insulin. So both of them have this way of stimulating each other. So if the insulin is high, you know that the insulin-like growth factor will also be stimulated. So that is my hypothesis. If you have insulin that's high, you'll probably have a lot of insulin-like growth factor secretion or stimulation, which usually means that mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, will be turned on. And that is going to be the opposite of longevity. So if you look at the information that Walter Longo is coming up with his 5-day fast, which is ways you might be able to, this is what I do every once in a while in addition to intermittent fasting, but this has shown reversal of disease. And the information is beautiful with regards to decreasing mTOR, pKa, increasing stem cell production. So it's great. For me, the ketogenic diet that I put together didn't work. In fact, it worsened. Maybe if I waited another couple months, it would be better, but I want to get to that point where I see my great-great-grandkids and I'm not in a wheelchair, not stuck in a bed. I mean, if you see my guys in the clinic, that's the way we should be living. Longevity should be as long as you can without any medical disease, and then you suddenly get death. So if you compress the morbidity, that'd be great. But what we have in the United States is we lengthen morbidity. So it comes on at 50 and it stays till 70. And that's not good because you suffer at that time. If you can live pretty decent and then have it come all at once, that's when people die of old age. So if we can die of old age, better. You don't have to have anybody take care of you. Hopefully this gives you a little idea about what to do, what I experienced. Maybe try it on your own, but get some blood tests beforehand, get some blood tests after, try for a little while, and then see what happens. But if you have any comments, put them down below on how you tolerated keto. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next video.